Carol. Hi, Carol.
Hi, Michelle.
There you are. Hi, Mindy. Hi, Adrian.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Long time no see.
Trying to mess with my crazy settings here. It's all funky.
Yeah. See, we were on Microsoft Teams when you did your presentation last time. That was a pain.
Right. Yes, and Microsoft Teams is not very user-friendly, I don't think.
Yeah, we're just so not used to it, and it's just a little bit different than some of them. It's clumsy, I think I would say.
Yeah, I don't use it as often, and so part of it is just unfamiliarity. But
yeah. I mean, they all do about the same thing, but even Collaborate's not very friendly, I don't think.
I think everybody's faces, and so some of those are better at that than others.
Yeah, seriously. So, Adrian, I'm going to just run over. I have a few little things to run over here. Hopefully you can see my screen. Should take maybe 5-10 minutes. And then there's some folks who have either seen your presentation, like our advisors, so they're going to drop off.
That's fine. Yeah.
And, I don't know how many will be left, but I'll be here. So,
well, and if everybody has seen it, we can, schedule it for next year or something if everyone's seen it. So
yeah, no, I haven't seen the whole thing. We did it with the chairs meeting, but I kept getting pulled in and out of that meeting as well.
Oh, gotcha.
So,
yeah,
definitely. And I know, Carol, have you seen the suicide prevention information? I don't think so, right?
No.
I mean, Carol would see students, probably more than some of us. So I think it's really just right now with everything, I just think it's such an important topic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good to know what Owens has, what they have right now, which might be different than we're used to, even with the COVID stuff. So.
Right. And we have seen an increase lately in suicidal ideation.
Oh, man.
So I know. And so I think it's good because, we're not the only ones that are going to come in contact with students that are struggling. So.
Right. And I've given everyone the power to just share their screen. So you should be able to just share your screen when it's time. I'll stop sharing mine. And do you want to test it?
Absolutely. Sure. It says host disabled, participant screen sharing.
Yeah, it lies. No, I changed that setting specifically, but I think I can make you a co-host. Give me 1 second.
I can send this to you if we need to do it that way.
We shouldn't need to do that. Let me just make sure here. Here we go. I can make you. What I'll do is when it's time, I'll make you the host and then you'll be able to share.
Okay, that sounds great.
Do you know how to make people the host and not the host in here? You want to practice it? If you go into the participants, you click on participants. Can you see that?
I can, yes.
When I make you the host, and we'll just wait to do it. When I make you the host, then when you're done, we'll just have you end the meeting. We'll just do it that way. Because you won't be able to see anything until I make you the host. So.
Okay.
All right. So let me share my screen again. I went in specifically and changed those options. So. Here we go. All participants. Okay. Hey, okay. Let's see. See if you can share now, just out of curiosity.
Okay. I can.
Yay. Okay. Something worked.
Yay, you did it.
All right, so I'm just going to do my little thing here. Okay. Well, it's 3:00, so we're going to get started so we can get right to our program here and get those out of here that that need to get out of here. So for the, well, thank you everyone for coming. I should start there. And we also have our guest with us right now, Adrienne Bainey, and she has an intern, and I don't have that name handy. Sorry.
Megan. That's all right, Megan.
And Megan, nice to have you. We're just going to run through our little notes here, and then we will let you guys take over. So again, thanks everybody. I know this has been a stressful week for everyone, just with everything going on, but I appreciate you coming, and we're going to go over just a few items, and then I'm going to turn it over to Adrienne, and we're going to really talk about something that's very important, especially right now with everything going on, and that's suicide prevention, whether it's with us, our family, our students, our colleagues, you know, people around us. It's such an important topic. So advising, do you have any updates? I know there was some outreach that you guys did for students that were in trouble or that were on probation, which is fantastic. Do anybody want to, I think it's Denise and Adam, you guys want to tell us about that just for a minute?
Yeah, Denise, are you on?
She is. I'm not sure. I think she's muted.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Adam. You want to tell us about what?
Yeah,
what
I'll tell. Yeah, no problem.
Sure.
So we finished up the probation outreach, and then what we're doing now is the outreach to students who are in good standing, but who are not yet registered. And so Denise and I both have, and Terry too, have both pretty big lists for those, you know, in the 70s, 80s, maybes.
Wow. So how do you reach out to them? Can you tell people what you actually do? Is it email? Is it phone?
For sure, for sure. So every advisor does the process a little bit differently too. What I do is I email everyone on my list and I say, hey, hope you're doing well. See you haven't registered. Feel free to make an appointment with me. And then if you don't, I'll reach out to you with specific course recommendations. And then what we'll do is we'll email the student individually and kind of say, hey, looking at your degree audit, here's specific recommendations that we think you should take for the spring semester. And then they kind of go from there. So mainly email, or what we tried to do first though was get them into an appointment, because that's just kind of easier for everyone around. So we're completing those lists, and then that's pretty much it right now. It's kind of just kind of biding the time till things really come in January. So
yeah. And how has that been going? Have you gotten good feedback from those that you've talked to, or?
Yeah, great feedback. I sent out my email and I had like 10 people make an appointment like immediately. So that's good.
Good.
Lots of people looking for the social work.
Denise, do you have anything to add? Pretty sure she's in. Well, she can jump in. Anything else, Adam, you want to tell us about?
That's pretty much it that's going on.
Okay.
Right now, yeah. So I'm gonna hop off this meeting after our department announcements.
Sure.
Adrienne's given me the training before, and I haven't. So, hi, Adrienne.
That's great. No, I appreciate it. So I'll move on to our next announcement. So if you're not aware, there's been some emails that have gone out, and I know it's been on the communication emails that we get. But First Gen Takeover is next week, on November 9th through the 13th. Remember that Veterans Day is next Wednesday, so there won't be classes, but First Gen Takeover is coming next week. The announcement I put in Blackboard, so just go check it out. There's a lot of neat events going on, and the more that we can support each other's events, again, it's just really good for our students, especially First Gen, you know, which is students that that come from families that maybe no one else has gone to higher education. Or taken any classes. So, I mean, these students need some support that maybe they wouldn't get anywhere else. So it's really up to us to help these students trying to figure out FAFSA for the first time, or, you know, just how to navigate getting into college is one thing. And then when you get there, as we all know, we're glad sometimes that we've had other people help us through some of these things. So it's a really great event. TRIO is a big sponsor of that. So anything, if you know any First Gen students, encourage them to participate in it. So really great. I love that theme. Also, if it's like deja vu, it is. We're getting a new bookstore. So if you remember, we had a new bookstore change to Follett over the summer. And as you also probably are aware, it didn't go very well. Through no fault of David War and Owens, we tried as hard as we did. I know Carol worked very hard getting all the materials in, and the numerous times that she had to re-enter data because they lost it. And then students weren't getting their books and access codes and things like that. So it just really did not go well with Follett. So they made the decision to just cut our losses, and we're going to a new bookstore coming up in spring. And for the life of me, I don't know why I didn't put the name of it. I don't remember it offhand. Carol, do you remember what the name of that new bookstore is?
Team Express, I think.
Yeah, but they're coming. So the way that I understand it's going to work is we just had training on how to enter all the books and materials and things that we need. So that's a project Carol's going to be working on again, as far as getting everything in. But from what I understand, in mid-December, students are going to get an email about the new change and how to access materials and things like that. So, sorry, it's asking me to log back in. Hold on. Okay, sorry. So anyways, students will be able to also, from my understanding, instead of book vouchers, they'll be able to use financial aid to purchase books. I don't have the details on that, but I just want everybody to know that changes are coming again, and hopefully we won't have those same issues that we had in fall. So be lookout for more information, and if students ask, you'll know that there is a change coming. So I want you to be aware of that.
Michelle,
Yeah,
I have
go
a
ahead.
question.
Sure.
I'm assuming it's not going to be a brick and mortar store.
Nope, it's an online bookstore, same as Follett, only apparently this one is a little more dedicated to getting things in and running a little smoother.
One can only hope.
I know, that was awful. Yeah, if you guys ever have a question, just jump in, as you know. As far as spring registration and enrollment, not a lot of people are looking at it this early, but I look at it every week anyways. I'm going to continue to send reminders, but I'm going to make it like once every couple weeks for our students out on Blackboard, just to keep reminding them to join early, especially if they want a face-to-face course. The reason I tell you that as well is if you know a student that you think maybe would just be better as a face-to-face student, encourage them to register now. So before the 15 spots that we have in our classroom are gone. Because this might be really important for some, and you know your students better than most people do. So encourage them to register early. So if we do need to get more sections, maybe we'll have a chance to still do that. To date, we have about 150 students that have already registered, which is about halfway to what we ended up in spring of 2020. So to me, that's a really good pace for people to even be thinking about registering right now. So I think that's good. That's good news for us as a department. Our new business, again, before we do have a chance to close out if people have to leave early. Again, I just want to remind people of our vigilance against COVID. I know we went through this the last time, but just again, make sure there's no eating or drinking in class. Please allow them breaks. If they do need to go out and get something to eat or drink, that's fine. We have students that come right from work. Encourage students to wipe down their desks and chairs, sanitize their hands. Those sanitation wipes in the classroom are god awful smelling. I don't know what the deal is with those, but they stink. Oh, I asked Michael if there's something we can do about that. They're awful. Also, instructors, for you, it's really, really important that you wipe down your workstations before and after that you come in, just in case. Again, we can get more wipes, so spare none of them. We want to make sure everyone is safe. Also, if students are using these supplies, please make sure that they either put them off to the side and the faculty member wipes them down, or have the students wipe them down before they put them away. Again, those boxes are back there. If they need to keep some supplies and just keep them for the whole semester, that's fine too. So feel free to use those. I have more of those little boxes that they can personalize to keep their own supplies. And if, again, I'm just always keep pounding it, that if you do feel ill as an instructor, you see a student who feels ill, encourage them to stay home. I know you've been doing that. And you've been doing academic gymnastics with people who are on Zoom and not coming, and those that are there. It is so much appreciated by everyone. Please know that, that for you to be able to do that is amazing. And I know the students really appreciate it as well. As always, with this surge going on, we're just going to continue to monitor what's happening in the state around us. You'll know as soon as I know if for some reason we go to remote learning. No one has said any of that to me or indicated that it's coming or imminent. But, again, always make sure that you have everything in Blackboard that students need in case we do have to go remote. And hopefully we could just get through the rest of this semester and get to that much needed break. So with that, again, hope is being able to see that there is light despite all the darkness. That's my message to you to take away from this meeting. So now I want to introduce Adrienne. And Adrienne is she's the Director of Counseling Services. I'll let her introduce herself as well, and her intern, Megan. And they're going to give us some professional development on question, persuade, refer, the 3 steps that anyone can take to help prevent suicide. So I hope you enjoy the program. If you have to jump off, that's fine, no worries. So please feel free. Adrienne, I'm going to stop sharing and I will have you do your thing.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll talk a little bit and let anyone jump off that needs to, and give everyone a second to do that. So as Michelle said, I'm Adrienne from Counseling Services. And if you don't know where we're located, I'll give you a quick update on how we're functioning in our office right now. So we are over in Veterans Hall, and we are still doing some limited face-to-face appointments. We have walk-in hours on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You can just find the times on our website. Students are permitted to come in. We have taken like a large sort of conference room offline for our face-to-face sessions so that we can have that appropriate social distance that everyone is talking about these days. So they're limited in the sense that 3 of us are sharing one room for face-to-face appointments. And so we kind of have to finagle some scheduling and things like that. But please let your students know that we're still here. We're still doing face-to-face. When we're not doing face-to-face, we're doing counseling via video. And so that counseling is still available all the time. We've had a lot of questions about that, and just wanted to keep spreading the word about those things. Megan Jablanowski, can you wave, Megan? I make her do silly things. No, she's our master's degree intern from University of Toledo from the clinical counseling program. She also sees students. She's super fantastic. She's going to help me out a little bit today to get some of those hours for her internship.
Nice.
Yeah, so she's going to be here with us today. Thank you for having us and inviting us. And we'll get started on this information here.
So Adrienne, real quickly, the counseling that's there, is that only for students, or can a staff member or a faculty member call, or is that strictly held outside in your own kind of thing for faculty?
So we are under the umbrella of student services.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So we're only for students. We also don't see alumni students. I sometimes get that question as well. We don't see alumni.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's a great question. Lots of people ask it. It's a wondering that plenty of people have. And since we just have, 7 of us here? Okay. I super prefer interactive conversations about this topic. I know that this is a difficult topic, and so I would never ask anyone to share anything they don't want to share. And really, we're just going to talk about the topic in general. But when we get to one of those questions, I would just love it if you would, unmute your microphone and we can talk freely about it together. If you have a question, feel free to flag me down or unmute your microphone. You can even, if you go to the participants section, you can raise your hand and hopefully I'll see it. but just kind of wanted to throw that out there. My goal is not to usurp this conversation at all or anything like that. So I would love your questions and comments, and even your experience too, if you've had experience helping with this topic before. So a couple things before we get started. This program is a national program. It's called Question, Persuade, Refer, QPR, 3 steps anyone can learn to help prevent suicide. And I love this program because it's very, very, very practical, which is right up my alley. And I think up the alley of most people too. I want to give you a few sort of, I don't know if warnings is the right word before we get into this topic. Obviously, this is a sensitive topic, and I think many, many, many people, probably more than we think, have been impacted by this topic in some way or another. And so if you need to take a break, that's fine. One of the things I want you to know is that I talk very directly about this topic. I'm not going to beat around the bush at all about anything relating to suicide. And I want you to understand where I'm coming from. My heart in that is not to be uncomfortably direct, but rather to communicate clearly about what we have seen surrounding this topic, what we know about this topic, and things like that. So I just kind of want to give that info up front to let you know that that's how this presentation will be. Okay, so with QPR, we're going to go real quick through a few of these. I'm trying to shave off a few minutes because I know that you don't normally meet this long. QPR, the intention is to offer hope through positive action. That's what we're going to talk about today. This is a gatekeeper program, which means that any individual in the community who has face-to-face contact with a large number of community members, that's kind of what we're looking at. So this program is not intended for, mental health experts or social work experts or anything like that. This is a community gatekeeper program, a program that anybody can use, that anybody can learn in order to strengthen our community surrounding the topic of suicide. So what we want to do in our conversation surrounding suicide and talking with others about it is that we want to establish rapport. Can anyone give me a good definition of what they believe rapport to be? Just throw it out there.
I guess comfort, offering a certain level of comfort, bringing people's walls down so that there's an openness on both sides.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
I would use the terms relationship building.
I think when I think of rapport, I think of connection, establishing some sort of connection with another person.
I was going to say communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we want out of this training is effective communication, right? And helpful communication, and even knowing how to communicate in the first place, right? That's a big question about this topic. Okay, so we're gonna learn about some signs regarding what to observe, warning signs, risk factors. We're going to teach you how to refer for help and then how to follow up. These are all things we're going to talk about today, kind of our goals. This is, again, I want to reiterate, this is not a training to teach people how to be a counselor or a therapist, or that you have to rescue everybody or fix all their problems or anything like that. If I could fix everybody's problems, I would be the most famous therapist on the planet. This is not the goal of this presentation. And so try to keep those things in mind as we're talking about the steps. Okay, so here's my first question. What are some thoughts or worries that you have or that you've noticed that other people have regarding talking with other people about suicide?
For me, I think it's, what if I pushed them over the edge, or what if I put that thought in their mind that they weren't thinking of? Bringing up a very taboo topic like that, I'm thinking I'll make it worse.
I think that's probably the number one worry that I hear.
I think it's
What other thoughts or worries? Oh, sorry, Mindy.
That's okay. I was gonna say, I just think it's sometimes trying to understand whether it's a serious suicide threat or just someone seeking attention. I hate to say it that way, but
We will talk a little bit about that. Yeah. Anything else? Any other worries people have?
I think that the two that were mentioned kind of fill in the big buckets of what I was thinking. And for some reason, I was thinking how you sometimes say to somebody, "Oh, congratulations," because you think they're pregnant and they're not.
Oh,
So, so
yeah.
so on the reverse side, it's like you may look to me like you have the signs of what I think may be, but maybe that's not even where you are mentally. And then I'm offering, how would I, you know what I mean? It's just long. And then I
Right.
go down this road and I realize I shouldn't have. And not that that's happened to me, but that was a worry that I had. when you
Belinda,
mentioned-
I think that is the most perfect illustration of how a lot of people feel. And we'll actually talk about how to skirt around that and how to figure it out before you stick your foot in your mouth. And we'll talk about that too. So when we survey people about the myths of suicide, we have some top myths. I'm going to cover those real quick. One is that you can't stop a suicide. More than any death, suicide is a very preventable death. And so what we want to communicate to people is that, any intervention that is given to a person can potentially set them on a different path. Okay, so a minute ago, we talked about, this program is really about offering hope through positive action. That's an intervention, okay? And so you don't have to use that word because it's sort of a counselor-y, social worky word, but, any intervention has the potential to change course for a person. And so now we don't want to make ourselves responsible for the choices of other people. That's very tricky to do when we're talking about these kinds of sensitive things. Okay, but having the belief that no one can do anything about this is just simply not accurate. Okay, we see it in research, we see it even through observation. You've probably seen it yourself, even in your own personal life. Talking with someone about suicide might make them angry and increase their risk. Okay, this is what Michelle was talking about. Tons of people think this. I think everybody is worried that, what if I bring it up and they weren't thinking about it, now they are? Or what if I bring it up and they respond badly? What am I going to do then? And Belinda kind of talked about that a little bit too. We're going to talk about some sort of backdoor ways that you can bring up the topic, some indirect ways of asking the question. And that will hopefully help kind of dispel this concern. Now, usually, asking directly really relieves anxiety more than you think it would. Okay, so I have been in mental health work, let me think, for about 20 years now. And I have met with lots and lots and lots of suicidal clients. And I can tell you, I would say probably at least 95% of them feel relieved when I ask them directly about this. Have you ever thought about hurting yourself in any way? Or have you ever thought suicidal thoughts? The reason is because imagine you're just really struggling and someone that comes up to you and they're like, hey, it seems like you've been kind of down today. How are you feeling? We don't normally become upset by that kind of show of concern. We normally feel relieved. And so that is one thing I just want to encourage you about, that in all of my years of asking people this question, almost always is it met with some kind of relief. Only experts can help. Okay, now I don't want to talk myself out of a job or anything like that in the helping profession, but when we look at research for mental health crisis, research shows us that a person's personal support system is what gets them through. Okay, so think of any crisis that you've ever been through in your whole life. Okay, maybe you have never gone through any kind of suicidal crisis, but we have all gone through some kind of crisis. The death of a loved one, maybe a car accident, some kind of natural disaster that destroyed part of your home. I mean, there's all kinds of things that people have experienced. Even the end of a relationship, a divorce, or something like that. The thing that gets you through the most is usually a loved one that supports you, and they can't fix it. Okay, but they come alongside you. They give you hugs. They take you out for coffee. If you're religious, maybe they pray for you. They listen to you. All of these kinds of ways that we find support in our support system is so helpful. And so the reason that this Community Gatekeeper program is so important is because of this major thing. Now, we don't want to crowd experts out of the picture, because sometimes people are struggling with really chronic mental illnesses or chronic struggles that they really need some professional help, and that's okay. But everybody has a part to play is kind of the point when we talk about this specific myth. Suicidal people keep their plans to themselves. This just simply is not true for the majority of people. There have been some that don't clearly communicate their intent. And so we don't want to give some blanket statement or policy or anything like that that says everybody 100% of the time, forever and always, communicates their plans or keeps their plans to themselves. We're not saying that here, but many people do. And usually the week before an attempt, those of us who have been connected with someone who has struggled with suicidal thinking and made an attempt, we can look back and think, oh man, they did communicate it to us. And it's not always clear. The reason that it's not always clear, partially, is because we're just unaware of some of the signs, the behavioral signs, some of the risk factors, which we're going to learn about today. So part of this can be helped with an educational process. Okay, just a couple more, and then I'll pause for questions if you have any or comments. Once someone decides to complete suicide, there's nothing that you can do. This goes back to the earlier thing I was talking about, that any intervention can set someone on a new path. Any positive action can provide someone hope that they didn't have yesterday when they were thinking about this. And so I really want you to take this one to heart. We really have an influence over the people in our lives. And I know that we don't always think that way. Some of us don't think of ourselves as leaders or anything like that, but it's really true that any intervention can set someone on a different path. People who talk about it aren't likely to complete suicide. So this gets a little bit at what Mindy was saying. Okay, sometimes people really don't have any kind of intent to complete suicide or attempt suicide, but we kind of struggle as the helper, okay, or the person in the relationship with it. If we're mom, if we're neighbor, if we're aunt, if we're uncle, if we're whatever, we really struggle with these kinds of things when we think that they're attention seeking. So before I came to Owens, I spent most of my career in community mental health. At least 75% of my caseload was probably foster kids. And this is not an uncommon struggle for foster kids. So here's the one thing that I'm going to say about this. Even if a person is attention seeking, if we just want to talk about it in that fashion, that is still a major concern. Maybe not that they will actually harm themselves, but the fact that they are using that as an attention-seeking method itself is a major concern. Okay, so I would still try to encourage this person to get some counseling or outside professional help. But people who, like, we kind of go back to that other myth that people don't communicate their plans. They do communicate their plans. And so this myth also is not true. People who talk about it aren't likely to complete suicide. People will often, in some way, share their plans. And so we'll talk about some of the ways that they do that in a minute. Okay, I'm going to pause there to see if anyone has any comments or questions about the myth piece.
So Adrian, I kind of a personal story, but when I was younger, my uncle came home from work and found his wife and his son
Oh,
committing suicide in a car in the
Oh,
garage
no.
kind of thing. And it was so odd because you said that, and it's so odd because they had like she had stuff sitting out to make dinner, so I guess that's why I always thought that myth was true, is that there are no signs, because it sure didn't seem like, like I always kept thinking, what made them that one day, at that time suddenly do something like that. So I always thought that was such an odd myth, for me personally, because it's always kind of bothered me that it looked like somebody was making plans and yet something triggered it, I
Well,
don't
and
know.
so what I would say to that is, like, remember when we talk about any kind of myth, really, is that, there was that one thing, that one time that happened that didn't go along
Yeah.
with the norm, right? Of how people communicate things or do things or what have you. And so because of that, then we almost like swing to the other side of the pendulum, and then we start perpetuating something that
Yeah.
mostly is not true.
Yeah,
And
I think
so-
that's a lot of what shaped what I think about it sometimes, is that, God, how could you not see that coming? Or, so interesting.
and
Thank
like
you.
I said too, with the other myth about how people communicate their plans in some way or another, mostly that is true, but not everybody does. And so these things, though, like, we don't want to believe that most people don't communicate their plans, because that's what's not true. Most people do, and there are some that aren't, but most people do. And so we don't want to give any kind of like 100% of the time this is how it always happens, because all of you know for sure that human behavior is not a formula. I wish it was sometimes, so I can figure out what's going to happen next. So we don't want to present it in a way that 100% of the time this is the deal.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. So thank you for bringing that up. I hope that I have communicated that more clearly. Okay. Anyone else?
What were the first two myths?
The first two myths, I can just go back. No one can stop a suicide.
Okay.
And talking with someone about suicide might make them angry and increase their risk.
Thank you.
Sure.
And Adrian, can we get the PowerPoint for this that I can send out to them as well?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Perfect.
Sure. Okay, so I know not everyone loves statistics. I am a research stats nerd. And so I thought, well, I'll include one slide here about some statistics, because sometimes I think this helps people wrap their mind around the bigger picture. So this is the only one I have. So if you don't love stats, then you can check out for just a second. So in the US, and this data is from 2017, that's the most recent data that I had available at the time that I made this presentation. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. That's pretty significant. Men died by suicide 3.5 times more than women did. Anyone make a guess why that is the case?
Loss of a job? They feel no?
No,
would
actually,
say
that is a risk factor, but that's not the
I would-
specific reason for this.
I would say they're more successful because of what they use to commit suicide.
Yeah, so what we say is that men tend to choose more lethal means. So men tend to choose something like a firearm or something like that. Women tend to choose methods like, overdosing on medication and alcohol or something like that. So here's one really important one, and I don't know that people always recognize the importance, so I want to talk about it. Firearms only account for about half of suicides. I've talked with people before who had concern about a loved one, and they're like, well, they don't have a gun or anything, so I'm not worried about it. But firearms only account for about half. There are many methods that people have used to try to attempt suicide. And so don't allow this to be something that you just, set something aside because someone doesn't have a firearm. Okay. The rate of suicide is highest in middle age, particularly in white men. And it's the second leading cause of death for ages, I can't see this. I think it's 6 to 12 or something, or 6 to 20 or 10 to 24. There we go. Sorry. Does anyone know the first leading cause of death for age 10 to 24?
Accidents.
Yep. Accidents of any kind. Household accidents, car accidents, anything like that. Yep, accidents. In Wood County, the highest rates of suicide tend to match what we see the national rates as being, but they are in April, June, September, and November. So in September, I don't know if you noticed any of this a few months ago, September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And we do a lot of at least educational awareness campaigning in September. And I was just telling Michelle, unfortunately, in our center, just over the last few weeks, we've seen a rise in suicidal ideation and thinking. And we're in November. And so I have professionally found this to be on target, unfortunately.
Can I ask you, you said that the men commit suicide more than women, but is the attempt the same? Like, because you said the reason is because it's a more lethal weapon, but does that account for what I'm really asking is who attempts suicide more, or is it the same for both sexes?
Well, that is a good question. The statistic is that men die 3.5 times more when they attempt. I don't believe that there's a significant difference between attempts. And I'm actually wondering, and Megan, if you know this, like because of some of your recent classes, I don't know if you have talked about this recently. I wonder if women actually attempt more.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, I think is what's in my brain. I don't have anything at this moment to back that up, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case.
Adrian, what surprised me about that list you just presented, I always held a myth that the highest rate was around the holidays, like Christmas. So
And
I
it's
was
not,
really
yeah.
surprised to see that.
Yeah, so if you think about the holidays, that can be a painful time for some, but for many people, we're spending extra time out of isolation, right?
Yeah.
Like we might see our neighbors more, we might spend time with our friends, and for Friendsgiving, we might be seeing our family, and even if our family is annoying, we're still engaging in social interactions, maybe more than what we are in April, for example. Okay, so we'll move into some of the warning signs. I do want to make a distinction between a warning sign and a risk factor. Okay, and the reason why I want to make this distinction is because just because someone has a risk factor doesn't mean that they're going to be suicidal or that they are suicidal. Okay, so you can see at the top of the screen, it says the more signs observed, the higher the risk. That is very important. Okay, so one of the risk factors is what Belinda mentioned earlier, some kind of significant loss. Okay, many of us, I would venture to say all of us, have had some kind of significant loss in our lives. That doesn't mean that we're suicidal. Okay, that's why it says the more signs we observe, the higher the risk. So we're going to start out with warning signs. We're going to start out with verbal warning signs. And you may be surprised, and you may not believe me that this is true, but please do believe me, this is true. People say these things. People will directly say, I've decided to kill myself. This is what I'm going to do. I've had that happen here at Owens in the counseling center. I wish I were dead. I'm going to end it all. If such and such doesn't happen, then I'll end it all. Okay, so one thing that isn't too uncommon, especially from the student side of mental health, is if I fail out of this program, then I'm going to do this. And so, these are things that people say, and it might sound shocking that people will just come out and say these things, but people do, especially if you show any kind of interest in listening or if you ask a question about it.
Adrian, I had a student that said those exact words about if I fail out of this program. And what I found out is that she was a first gen student who, her parents didn't understand what she was going through and how stressful a program can be. And so, I mean, she literally said, if I fail this, class, I will kill myself. And I had, had to get into the counseling area and get her there fast. But
That's scary stuff, and really what we find is with students that are struggling in that manner, if we can surround them with supports, it makes things so much better. So like, I'm a first gen college grad. I'm a first gen master's degree grad. My mom was a factory worker. She had no clue how to navigate the college system at all. And it was very stressful. I just remember it was also very stressful for other things, like she wanted me to come home every weekend. I'm like, Mom, I can't come home. I have to use the library. I have this paper. I have to do all this study. And she just did not get it. And when you have that kind of emotional pressure from your family, it can just be difficult because you want to please your family. Most people do. We want to please our family members. We don't want to disappoint them. And it's a real struggle. But if we can, make these supports available, sometimes even if we can normalize struggle, it takes a little bit of a load off. Okay, sometimes people are more indirect. Okay, they'll say things like, I'm tired of life, I can't go on. My family would be better off without me. Who cares if I'm dead anyway? I feel like that one's kind of a direct one. I won't be around much longer, I just want out. One that I actually hear pretty often, I should just put it on this presentation, I don't know why I didn't, but one that I hear pretty often is, I just wish I would go to sleep and never wake up. That's a pretty common phrase that people have said. So also right here, I want to point out to you, okay, if you look at my hands, imagine that this is a continuum. Okay, this is a line, there's a continuum here. Okay, this is the suicide continuum. Now, remember how I said the more signs observed, the higher the risk. Okay, that puts them on this end of the continuum. The more signs observed, the higher the risk. Now, there's also like way down here, like where someone might feel like they wish they were dead, but they're not thinking about like, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go do that, I'm going to do all the other things that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But they're still, that's still concerning. If someone wishes they were dead and that they'd go to sleep and never wake up, that's still concerning. And we want to help that person, figure out how to move forward, in a successful way. And so, but there's this real continuum here. And sometimes people think that you're either suicidal or you're not. And that really isn't the case. Okay, because remember, the accumulation is really important. If so, I think, I wish I were dead. I want to go to sleep and never wake up. Okay, so that's where my mental health is. And then I have the significant loss. Maybe I get a divorce. Okay, and then I lose my job because I'm struggling because I was divorced. Now I have lost my job. Now I have financial problems and can't pay my bills. Then my best friend moves to the other side of the country. Like the accumulation is really important of some of these things. Okay, we're going to move from verbal to behavioral. Okay, so if someone has attempted in the past, that automatically puts them at a little bit higher risk. Okay, again, a risk factor doesn't mean a determining factor. It is only a risk factor that we just need to pay attention to. If a person is acquiring weapons or pills or anything like that, that is a major red flag. If they're putting their personal affairs in order, if they have relapsed with drugs and alcohol, or they have just started recklessly using drugs or alcohol, if they have a sudden mood lift or unexplained happiness. Can anyone give some insight into this one?
I would say they've come to peace with their decision and they have a huge weight lifted off of them that the end is near and they can finally find peace.
You totally got it. This one is super tricky. I don't have a lot to say about that. Like as a counselor, it's always very concerning because you just never know. And so it's really tough. They start withdrawing or isolating themselves. Sometimes people become aggressive or impulsive, like reckless behavior. Like, I'm just going to go do whatever I want. And it's high risk kind of reckless, impulsive behavior. Sudden mood changes, loss of interest in values that have forever been important to them. So maybe they attend some kind of place of worship and now they stop going. Maybe they attended every family gathering and now they never show up. Maybe they have this hobby. They love, I don't know, crafting or something, and all that stuff is piling up in the corner. I mean, it can be anything. But when we stop doing the things that help refresh us, then it's hard to become refreshed again. And all of us can relate to this. We've all done this when we felt overwhelmed or stressed. Okay, situational. Belinda mentioned one of these earlier, being fired, being expelled from school, the loss of a loved one. And you've heard me mention it a couple of times, but I want to point out that loss doesn't only include death. Okay, grief comes in many forms, and that can be through divorce or through our best human moving away or anything like that. Terminal illness. If someone has a close person that has died by suicide, that's a risk factor. If a person has a history of abuse, neglect, or trauma, that's a risk factor. Now, can a person have sustained significant physical or sexual or emotional abuse as a child and not be suicidal? Of course they can. Yeah, sure. Okay. Remember, we have this continuum. Okay. These are risk factors and some signs. Okay. But the accumulation of things is important. Okay. Lots of people have gone through abuse and neglect and never had a suicidal thought in their lives. And so we don't want to automatically make assumptions. You know, for example, that if someone is diagnosed with a terminal illness, that they will become suicidal. Okay, we just want to be educated about what some of the, what research shows are some of the things that are significant in people's lives in accumulation of each other. Okay, so before we get to the kind of practical parts, does anyone have a question or comment? Okay, so a few tips before we kind of go to some very specific questions. If you are doubting, you know, wondering if they're suicidal, then you just need to find a way to ask, and we're going to practice that in a minute. Consider their privacy. Don't ask them in front of a whole big group of people. Consider, you know, kind of the golden rule sort of thing. If this were me and I were really struggling, would I want someone to call me out in front of other people? Allow plenty of time to have this conversation. If you know that you have to be there somewhere in 5 minutes, it might not be a great time to start the conversation. It might be a great time for you to get someone else to have this conversation with this person. Know what your resources are, which I'm actually going to give you a slew of resources here in a little bit. And then just encourage help seeking and support in whatever way you can. Okay, so Miss Megan, are you still on?
I am.
She is. Can you read these for me? We're going to talk
Absolutely.
about 2 ways that you can ask this question. So if you have your camera on, raise your hand, and you can raise your hand, I guess, digitally too, since that's the world we live in. If you believe yourself in general to be a more direct communicator. Okay, Michelle says yes. Lisa says yes. Okay. Mindy.
No.
Are you? No, okay, no, okay. So for you direct people, here is some like a script that you can use. Okay, some examples of how you can ask this question. Okay, go ahead, Megan.
Yeah. So the first one, when people are this sad, sometimes they wish they were dead. Do you ever feel that way? I'm worried about you, and I'm wondering if you have ever thought about suicide. I'm sad to hear you're struggling like this. Have you ever thought of harming yourself on purpose in any way? Have you been feeling so unhappy that you've thought of ending your life?
Okay, so these are some very specific ways that you can ask this question. So for my direct folks, so Michelle, is it Elisa or Alyssa? Alyssa? Elisa. Okay, pick one of these and let us know which one you think, just as a direct communicator, you would feel most comfortable with, which statement.
Would choose the second one.
I'm worried about you, and I'm wondering if you've ever thought about suicide. Okay, what about you, Michelle?
I think the third one probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Okay, so for our less direct people, it's your turn. Here are some options for you. Megan will read those aloud as well.
So the first one, you seem like you've been unhappy lately. How is everything going? Do you ever think about going to sleep and not waking up? I know people who have been depressed before and it is tough, or I have been depressed before. Will you tell me more about how you've been feeling?
Okay, so Miss Belinda, here's
Definitely.
your,
Yeah, I was gonna say definitely number one. You seem like you've been unhappy lately. How is everything going?
absolutely. Well, and if you're worried about the whole, like, congratulations, you're pregnant and you're not, I do think that example was good. You can start with one of these very general questions, because you might say, I know people who've been depressed, or I've been depressed, or I've struggled before. How's everything going? And then they're like, things have just been rough, but I'm going to be okay. I'm just super stressed. And you kind of have your answer, right? But if you say that question and then they're like, oh man, if only you knew what was in my head right now. Okay, so when you ask a very general question that's open-ended like that, it can really direct your conversation. And so this is a great place to start, really, for anyone. But for our less direct folks, which one would you choose? Which one feels most comfortable?
Number
I'd
one.
probably
for
use
me.
the last one.
Okay, the last one. Okay,
Number one for me.
okay. Yeah, I like that one. It's just, I think, a very caring way to frame a question. Yeah. I like these. And like I said, I like tangible, practical things. And so hopefully you found this part helpful about how to start the conversation, how to ask the question. Okay, here's what you're not going to do, okay? You're not going to say, you're not suicidal, are you? Okay, because if they are, now they're not going to tell you. You wouldn't do anything stupid, would you? I don't think any of us like being called stupid. That's just not a great way to start out a conversation in general. Here's one actually that I have heard from many people over the years. And if I were going to be totally honest, I've thought this myself. Okay, let's be real here. But your situation isn't bad enough to do something like that. Okay, here's my advice for you on this. Even if this is true, and this thought goes through your mind, that is your inside voice, okay? That stays in your brain and it doesn't come out because it's just not helpful. It's just not helpful to the conversation. And I think probably many people have felt this way in terms of, like, let's say you just have a loved one in your life who's overreacting to something, maybe not even suicidal, but who's just overreacting. And you're like, this situation is not that bad to be doing what you're doing. Okay, we've all thought these things. And so it's not bad that you think it, but it usually doesn't go well if you say, your situation's not that bad. Because we all also have the experience of feeling very stuck in an emotion. Okay, have you ever just felt stuck, like maybe you've experienced betrayal, or maybe a friend has done something harmful to you or said something mean, or maybe your parents or whatever, and it's just hard to let go of, and sometimes, or maybe after the loss of a loved one, you think, I will never experience happiness again. Maybe you're not even suicidal, but you know, all of us know the feeling of being totally stuck, Like, I will never get well again. I will never be happy again. I will never have energy again. Okay, we've all said those kinds of things to ourselves before. The point is, that's how people who are having suicidal thinking feel. And it may not be true, because we know that things will get better. But that's not how they feel in that moment. Okay, so the purpose is to meet them in the moment and encourage them to get help. Okay, things like, but you have so much to live for, you know. Part of counseling actually is helping them to think through important things in their life. But for this, like, you know, first conversation, phrasing it this way, we find just usually isn't received well. And so that's why this is on the list. Not because we don't talk about this, but just the way that this is phrased, people don't respond well to that. Okay, any questions about the cue part of the process before we move on to persuade? Okay, so a couple tips. Give them your full attention. This goes back to, if you know you only have 5 minutes, call for backup, okay? Because taking your time to have this conversation is going to be worth it. And when I say give them your full attention, hopefully I don't have to speak to this room this way, but I'll say it anyway. That's how I talk to my students about it too. You know, don't be on your phone. don't be trying to catch Netflix in between sentences or whatever. Just don't do that. Give them your full attention. Don't argue, judge, or try to give them advice. I don't know why I think this, but I remember I had one of my children was extremely fussy when they were a baby, like extremely fussy all the time. And it was super stressful. And finally, I ventured back out into the world. And my first trip back into the world, my son was, you know, crying at the top of his lungs because that's what he was doing at that time in his life. And I had this, you know, older lady turn around to me in line and say, "Have you ever thought of a pacifier?" And I thought, you know, I'm not sure that you really want to talk to a sleep-deprived new mother in that way, right? But we tend to do this sometimes, like, well, have you ever thought of taking a bubble bath or something? I don't know, like, you know, people give all kinds of advice. And so just pay attention and to the things that you're saying.
You should have just given her a pacifier.
Oh, girl, I'm not even gonna tell you what I was thinking.
The lady, I mean.
No, right? You know, just tell them, I am sorry that things are so hard for you right now. I've experienced times in my life where things were really overwhelming. I just want to be supportive. I just really want to be a good friend to you. That feels good, doesn't it? To hear that when you're struggling. Offer or affirm hope in any form. This is really important because they may find hope in something that you don't find hope in. But if they find hope in it and they bring it up, if it's not something that hurts them, you know, encourage them to do it. You know, I don't love doing crafts or art really at all. I don't like art. And my husband is an art teacher. Okay. I don't know how I don't know how I got into this relationship was what I was going to say, but totally different interests. I do not want to do art. I don't like it. But if someone said to me, you know, painting is so calming and soothing and refreshing, you know, maybe I can start painting again. I would say, absolutely do that. Because it's not refreshing to me. I want to throw the brush across the room and smash it. That is not refreshing to me. That is not a project I would choose to do if I'm struggling, okay? But someone else might really feel encouraged by that. My husband does, you know, and so even if they find hope in something you don't like, that's okay. Encourage it. Drop off some art supplies, you know, be their friend and support her in that way. Try not to leave them alone if you think that they're really in crisis. Okay, so something that happens with some frequency now, I talked with students a lot about this. A friend will text them and will say something like, you know, I'm crazy struggling right now. I'm thinking about ending it all or something. that's the kind of crisis we don't want someone to be alone for. And so, you know, I say if it's safe, now if it's not safe, we just need to call 911. Okay, but if it is safe, you know, take a pizza over, watch a movie, have a conversation and watch a movie. You know, ask them to meet you for coffee. You know, just don't leave them alone. You know, like I said earlier, research shows that just loving, caring support gets us through a lot of things. And so showing that by listening and caring for them, and we're going to talk about persuading them to get some professional help, you know, just being with them is helpful. And really, if COVID has taught us anything, it's that we need people in our lives, right? So many people are struggling right now with loneliness. Okay, people are important, and being with people, not on Zoom, is important. I wish I was with you right now in a room face to face. I would very much prefer that over this, but maybe sometime soon. Okay, so after listening and providing them some support, here are a couple of things that you can say. Megan, you want to read these?
Yeah, absolutely. The first one, will you let me help you get help? Will you come with me to get some help? Let's call and make an appointment to get you connected somewhere that can help.
Okay, so I can attest. Let's talk about the third one. Occasionally, students will come into our center and there just isn't like a lot that we can do to be helpful to them. Like maybe they need evening appointments because they're getting ready to do their nursing clinicals and we don't have evening appointments. And so really what we need to do then is connect them into the community. Okay, so what we do is that we would sit down with such a student and we would just make the call for them. Okay, because when you're really down or depressed, one thing you don't want to do is call a half dozen mental health providers and try to figure out when the soonest appointment is going to be for you. Okay, we're happy to help students do that, to take that burden off of them. Okay, so that is like one simple thing that you can do to be helpful. You know, you can hand them a phone number of a local counseling agency, but what you might not know is that they have a 3-month waiting list. Okay, and this person can't be waiting 3 months. Okay, so you can just make the call and say, hey, I have a friend who's really struggling. They've had some suicidal thoughts. You know, when's the earliest that you can get them in? I'm just calling to, you know, kind of see who's available. But we can get them in tomorrow. Great. And then you've just really taken a burden off of that person by making some phone calls. Sometimes counseling feels terrifying to them. I have had so many comments over the years about how, you know, they come to counseling and they're like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I always ask, what did you think this was going to be like? Because it's kind of fun to hear the answer. Okay, you know, in their minds, they had this idea of Freud smoking a pipe with a couch and they have to talk about their mom or something. And counseling in general is a very practical tool that we can help people you know, find new ways of coping with really stressful things, okay? And so I kind of always get a chuckle out of some of those comments, you know, but sometimes they just want you to go because it's new and they don't really know what to expect. And so you can just go as a friend or a loved one and say, you know, I'll drive you there and I'll just wait in the waiting room for you. That is something that's really supportive and helpful. Now, remember, you can see at the bottom, your willingness to provide support can rekindle that hope that we're talking about. Okay, we're just talking about positive action. Okay, you can help do that for someone. Okay, any questions or comments about the P step, persuade? Okay. So now we're at our last step. I'm going to be giving you some resource information. And so if you want to write down some of these numbers, I'm actually going to encourage you to put them into your phone. That's what I've done, and I've actually found them helpful on more than one occasion. So here's some tips for refer before we get to that resource page. Put the information in your phone. Okay, now here's the kicker. If you believe that someone is in immediate danger, then your next step is to just call 911. Okay, if they're in immediate danger, then they just need help immediately. And we don't need to be doing all of the, let me ask all these questions and all of those kinds of things. So if someone sends you a message or calls you and you know that they've been struggling and they give you some indication that this is going to happen, this happens with some frequency by text messaging now, then you just need to call 911 and know, hopefully you know that person's address, or just give the police as much information as you can. So let me tell you what some of the options are, because I recognize that not everybody knows how this goes down for the state of Ohio. So with calling police, there are several options. I have sent the police to a student's home before because the student has maybe sent a string of emails that were very concerning, and no one can get a hold of the student, and the student won't call me back because I will reach out to students if they're suicidal, and they won't call me back and they won't write me back, and they stopped coming to class. And there's just enough concerning that what I'll do is call the police department where they live and say, can you do a wellness check for me? Okay, so I'm not calling 911 because I don't really know if they're in immediate danger, but I'll say to the police, can you just do a wellness check? And the police will go over, and that's exactly what it is. They'll see, are you okay? Can we get you some help? Can we refer you somewhere? Okay, so that's one way. Another way is 911. Like, you believe that they're going to be doing something now and they're in immediate danger, and they'll send over appropriate people for that. Now, in Ohio, you can be admitted to the hospital by the police if they believe that you are an imminent danger to yourself. It's not like that in every state, but in Ohio it is. And so if the police have a concern that you are in real danger, then they will take you to a hospital. If it's something, further down on that kind of continuum that I showed you, then usually they'll say, we just need to get you hooked up with some counseling. Okay. Now, as far as campus goes, our Department of Public Safety has access to community mental health providers that will come to campus. So let's say that after your class, that's from 6 to 9, counseling isn't open, at 9 p.m. Let's say a student comes up to you and they reveal that they are really struggling and having some suicidal thoughts. You can call the Department of Public Safety and they'll come talk to the student. And if they feel like, it would be helpful for a mental health person to talk with them, we have something in Wood County called the Mobile Crisis Unit. It's through a community mental health agency, and they'll come to campus. And so we've used that, I'd say probably 5 times now. And the police have a lot of good things to say about these folks that come from the Mobile Crisis Unit. And so that is another way that if you're on campus and the counseling center is not open, or something like that, that we can have that Mobile Crisis Unit come. If possible, include them in the decision of getting help. Kind of what I mean by this is, like, when you're trying to talk them into, I just really love you and I want to be a good friend and I think it would be good for you to just talk to a counselor. Is there a place that you like, I'll help you call and help you set up the appointment if you want me to. And not everyone will want you to do that, but some people will feel overwhelmed enough that feels like a gift. But you can say, like, is there a place that you already know of that you want to go? And I'll call them first, that kind of thing. Now, here's another thing I'll say about this piece. Sometimes people will say, I've been in counseling before and it sucked. I hated my counselor. They were lame. Okay, that may have been true. Okay, maybe they weren't in a place where they were ready for change too. There's a whole bunch of reasons why that could have gone down the way it did. Encourage them to see somebody else. Okay, for one, it's really unrealistic of us to assume that a counselor can connect with every single person ever that comes into their office. As a teacher, instructor, professor, you don't connect with every single student ever that comes into your office. Okay, it's just not possible. Even if you're a really great employee, we don't connect with everyone all the time, and that's okay. And so if they've had a bad experience with a counselor, just say, yeah, but let's find someone different and just try it out again. If they're under 18, their parent or guardian needs to be involved. I'll just throw that out there. Okay, so a couple more tips to remember. Really, most efforts to persuade someone to live and get help are accepted with relief. Just like when you are super stressed and you talk to a friend and you confess all of these things and you think, oh my gosh, this friend is going to think differently of me forever. And they're like, man, I felt that way before too. That's very relieving and feels very supportive and comforting. Say things that show support, like, I want you to live. I want to support you. We'll get through this together. Hey, how about we do a weekly coffee date? And let's just meet for coffee, every Wednesday night and just talk and hang out. Sometimes when someone is in a place where they're lower down on the continuum of like, they're just really struggling and they kind of wish they'd go to bed and never wake up, talking about things with people who care about them, that sometimes is just enough helpful that it gets them through that tough time. And you've probably had that experience too, where you're just really struggling. And sometimes it just feels good to tell someone and to have them be like, man, I'm so sorry that is going on for you. Okay, here's something I want to point out real quick. Treat this like any other illness. That's how I want you to think about this. Okay, send cards, text this person something encouraging. Okay, I did this presentation in the community one time, and I had this woman come up to me and she said, I want to tell you a story. This frequently happens, with these kinds of things. I said, absolutely. What's your story? And so she said that many years ago, she had some emotional struggles and was admitted to the hospital and to the psychiatric unit because she was suicidal. And she was in there for a while, and she said literally nobody contacted her. She said it was the worst time in my whole life. I was suicidal, I wanted to die, and nobody contacted me. So she gets out of the hospital, gets some help, life improves a little bit. Fast forward in time, she has some kind of surgery. I don't recall at this time what the surgery was, but she was in the hospital again for this surgery. She said, wouldn't you know it, so many people called me and wrote me and sent me flowers. And when I came home, they did a meal train and they came to visit me. And she said, I almost experienced that hurt all over again. I said, of course you did. That is rough. Okay, so here's the deal. This is what I had talked about with that woman. People don't reach out, not because they don't care. I seriously don't believe that. They don't because they don't know what to do and they don't want to make it worse. And probably all of us can relate to that. Like sometimes we just don't do anything because we don't know what to do. And so we do nothing. Okay, that is something we've all done. Okay, with something or another. And so if this happens sometimes in your life where you know of someone who is struggling in this way, treat it like any other illness. Send them a card that says, I love you and I care about you. Send them a text, hey buddy, how you doing today? Give them a hug when you see them. And you can even confess, I don't know what to say right now, but I want you to know that I love you. Like, that's okay. That's totally okay. I have done this when people that I know have lost a loved one. Like we actually recently just had a neighbor during quarantine, actually. One of our neighbors' sons died. It was horrible. And I'm a mental health therapist, people, okay? And I just went over there. Like, what do you say to a person who just lost their kid? Nothing. There's nothing that can be said that is okay for that, And so I just went up to her. I was like, listen, I know that there's nothing I can say that would really comfort you or that would fix this, but I just want you to know that we love you. We're here. If you want a hug, I'll give you one, even though it's COVID time. Like, even confessing it is okay. And so when something like this happens, that's all you need. Just, call the elephant in the room. I don't know what to say right now, but I love you. And, or I care about you. Or I'm concerned about you. I want to be helpful. Okay, so that's my, soapbox. Okay, here's some resources for you. Crisis text line is super fantastic. It's free, it's national, it's confidential. Obviously, it's a text line. I will say, although crisis is in the title, it doesn't have to be a mental health crisis. Students can just contact this number if they're like, my boyfriend broke up with me and I'm stressed out. That's okay. However, the way that their software prioritizes texts is that if there are certain words in those texts, then it bumps them to the top of the response list. Okay, so if someone says, I'm sitting with a friend who's suicidal, what do I do? That's going to be bumped to the top of the list for them to respond to. Whereas if someone says, I'm super stressed and just want to vent, that is not going to be at the top of the list. It's not first come, first serve. Okay, so if you're going to use Crisis Text Line as a resource, you need to put in there exactly what you need. Okay, the Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a super great resource. That is a talking line. So you can call them and say, I'm sitting with a friend who's suicidal, what should I do? That's a great resource. The Wood County Crisis Line, this is the mobile unit I was telling you about. So like, let's say you have an adolescent who is disclosing some suicidal thinking and it's Friday night at 8 p.m. You can call the Wood County Crisis Line if you live in Wood County. And they could talk with you over the phone. Now, not every county has a mobile unit, but there are places like in Hancock County, the Family Resource Center has extensive hours. Lucas County Rescue Crisis is a place that's open all the time in Lucas County. Okay, campus resources. I talked with you about how public safety works. They have access to mental health people that they can call if needed. Counseling services, we're open during normal business hours. Like I said before, we still have face-to-face services and we are doing video counseling. There are other more specific lines for crisis work. So you can see the Veterans Crisis Line, the Trevor Project, which is for LGBTQ, the Friendship Line. This is a great one. If you have any loved ones in your life that are over 60, the Friendship Line is a great resource if they're feeling lonely or struggling. And then 211 is a non-emergency referral line for Ohio that you can call. And that can be for anything. It can be for, housing help, or where are the local food pantries, or, I want to set up an appointment with a community mental health provider. Can you give me some direction? And then NAMI.org. NAMI, if you have family members that are struggling, NAMI is a great resource. They have it's free. Okay. They have lots of support groups. They have support groups for survivors who have lost someone to suicide. They have tons of support groups, not just surrounding suicide, but they are a mental health organization and all their stuff is free. And so check them out, NAMI.org, NAMI. They're a great resource as well. And I think that's it. I'm going to check. Yep. Okay. So I'll stop sharing my screen and then ask if anybody has questions or comments.
Oh, that was a lot of resources. Thank you. I didn't know a few of them. Some of them I did know, but that was a great list right there. So I'll make sure
I'll email
that.
this to you.
Awesome. That would be great. Because I'd like to put that maybe in our classrooms as well, so they have them in case they need them as a nice resource.
Yeah, and
Great
as you can
presentation.
imagine, the crisis text line is really great for our younger students.
Yeah.
It's a good resource.
I have a student whose brother committed suicide 4 months ago.
Oh,
And she emailed each of us instructors 2 weeks ago and said, I'm not going to be here the next 2 weeks. My brother's birthday's coming up and we as a family are going to get together. and celebrate his life. And well, I did some digging and I found her mom on Facebook, and I saw a picture of my student and in her family. And when I first looked at the family photo, I could not find my student because the girl I was looking at was this beautiful, happy girl. And you know, and I reached out to her yesterday because she didn't come to class yesterday, and it's now 3 weeks and it should have only been 1 week, right? So she did respond. Thank God she did respond. And, you know, I just said, I didn't quite know what to say. I wish I had had this class yesterday, you know what I mean? But I just said, you know, I know why you're gone. I'm thinking about you. If there's anything I can do to help you succeed in this class, you know, my goal is for you to be successful. So, you know, I'm hoping that we can have a conversation, but even though she may or may not be suicidal, would I still be able to refer her to you?
Absolutely. Students can just come to us if they're stressed out. They don't even have to have any kind of chronic, you know, depression or chronic anxiety or anything like that. The good thing about a campus counseling center is that, I mean, we can help with test anxiety. It doesn't have to be kind of the traditional things you might see people going to counseling for in the community. So for sure.
Thank you.
Hey, Belinda. It's one of the things I love most about you is the relationships you have with our students. Thank you. Like that is just like really awesome that you took the time, because that'll be the difference between her continuing and not continuing. And and
That's
you're
above and beyond,
providing
Belinda.
such a
Kudos.
great example.
Thank you. Thank you.
And those are the things that students put in their graduation surveys. Like the professors just really cared about me, and you know, I got more attention in a smaller class. I mean, those kinds of things are really important.
Adrian, is there anything we can do as a department right now to maybe reach out to students or to help students that might be stressed or even anxiety, or just, you know, like I said, with everything going on, you know, is there any suggestions for us as a department that we could do, a message we could send, or something that you have that we could offer, a pamphlet or something that we could give them?
So one of the things that I encourage a lot of people to do is to put, you know, like you do in your syllabus for Disability Resource Center.
Yeah.
Put something on there about counseling services. Lots of instructors have done that. And a lot of students have, when we ask them, how'd you find out about us? They're like, oh, it was on my syllabus. So that's one really easy thing you can just put on your template of your syllabus.
Yeah.
Another thing is, I have found it very successful. Okay, so let me give an example. So last year in September, I did these QPR trainings. I did a dozen of them in September. I had, I don't know, over 120 people come.
Oh, wow.
Most of them students.
Wow.
And part of the reason why was because instructors were like, if you go to this, I'll give you extra credit.
Oh.
Okay, and so when students can learn about this kind of thing, and then we were booked for weeks because students that came to those presentations were like, you know, that lady's not as weird as I thought she would be. And maybe the counseling folks are total weirdos after all, and I'll go see them. You know, and so with events like that counseling services hosts, we almost always get students that come to counseling after those kinds of things. So like, for example, Megan just ended a group called Positive Vibes with Megan, and it was all about positive psychology, ways that we can implement into our life. Next week for First Gen Week, I'm giving a presentation on imposter syndrome. All of you know that your students feel like imposters, right? or maybe you do. I do. Sometimes I'm like, I'm an imposter. So we're talking about that, and inevitably, you know, a student will probably come contact our counseling center. So any way that you can encourage them to attend our events, if you can put it in the syllabus, if you want to put it on your Blackboard announcements page, you know, hey, counseling services is available for free. We don't charge them, you know, it's included in their general student fee. Any of those things is really helpful.
Do you stream any of these events right now because of COVID? Like
No,
live events?
Yeah, we haven't been streaming them. No. I wish I had more to give you. We haven't
Yeah.
done that.
Well, maybe we'll talk for maybe we can arrange something that we can do a live stream or something of this event, or we'll talk, maybe, a abbreviated version or something for students and see if we
And
can give them.
do lots of classroom presentations. We have lots available. So, I mean, even on like test anxiety or stress management or time management or healthy versus toxic relationships, or I think Megan even has one that she does about how to cope with the anxiety of COVID. We have lots of presentations. So like if you have a time where you're like, this would go really well with this unit, and we can try to see if one of us is available to come.
Okay. Got some ideas swirling up here.
Good.
I'm thinking, you said September is Mental Health Month, right?
Suicide prevention awareness.
Suicide prevention. No, I'm just thinking if we encourage our students to get so many punches, right? Or something, they get a reward or a raffle for something at the end of the semester if they participate in so many counseling events or something to that effect. So maybe that would be kind of a fun thing to do all semester, just to encourage competition and get mental health along the way.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Think about that.
It's really something I think that this generation that's coming up is going to destigmatize, which I think is a huge task and a huge benefit to the rest of us who, like I say to students sometimes, you'd think nothing of going to the doctor if you had chronic stomach aches. If you're having chronic depression or anxiety, that's in some ways normal. Like we just need a little extra help sometimes. And so, I think it's getting better. And this generation, I think, is going to make it even more, normalized, that we all have emotions and sometimes we struggle with them. So,
yeah, excellent. Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Adrienne? Or Megan?
appreciate
Megan,
this.
good luck on your program.
Thank you so much.
he has to put up with me every day. So,
Yeah,
No,
I
I'm
bet that's
lucky to
real
have
rough.
Adrienne. I'm so lucky to have Adrienne.
Well, Adrienne, thank you. Megan, thank you so much for being with us. We really, truly appreciate it.
thank you.
If you send me the information, I can send it out to everybody. And I'll get with you. Maybe we can work something out for our students as well.
And I'll just send that to you now so I don't forget.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
you.
I won't take up any more time. Have a good one. We'll, if I
Enjoy
don't
the
see you, we'll
weekend.
have a great weekend.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.